but many
Okay.
know it. That's where I've come up with dentists as being a clientele that I want to serve. And then you brought in like, hey, but they also have patients, and this blood work could be in service of them. So that's where I think it is a beautiful vertical. But the primary target is like, I feel that there are people that are in a stage of burnout. They're not close enough to retirement horizon. So their personal relationships are suffering significantly. Their vocational life, they don't have purpose anymore. They've lost that, even the spiritual side. They've lost some of their own identities, and then financially they're suffering because of that. So this is the byproduct of burnout. So I really want to help people with. As I'm just going through some of my offerings with greater detail, and I think that price point is going to go to about $19.97, and that would be a blood work, a consultation, a report, and a few other things, some strategies, and including into the kind of the framework, what I call the Wheel of Wealth. That's the first kind of tiered package I want to bring, and we can, whatever the percentage share is. But let's say a chiropractor is like, yeah, I'm high volume. I don't have really any time nor much interest or even like expertise in blood work. And I do see that it can be a value plus an additional stream of revenue for my clinic. Like that'd be like a yes, yes, yes. And so then we would come in and we'd negotiate like, okay, awesome. I charge, $19.97 for this. There are hard costs involved with this. Beyond the hard cost, here's where my margin is. What if now we talk about, the percentage there? If it's 50-50, which I think would be equitable, if they're bringing forward the clientele, I build the hard costs in for, compensating you and what we're doing already. But that's what it would look like. And yet our scope of practice says we can do this. And that's where I've just philosophically is like, I'm not going to give my patients less just because your insurance company says this is what you'll pay for. With all the love and compassion in my heart, I have found that I'm trying to answer bigger problems, and there's a lot of good chiropractors. There's a lot of good practitioners that can help those people that aren't able to afford the $700. I am looking for a unique clientele. And to that point, so thank you, Michael, for bringing that. I'll share just a little bit of, vision of here's what it is that I'm creating. And it's a little bit, there's uncertainty in here. And you guys have both felt like, I'm not sure what he's doing, because it's still like creating it. And I've stepped out of full-time practice. I love working on patients. I have this privilege. It has been an honor. And I see constraints within the clinical model. And here's a constraint that I see within the clinical model. The objective for a patient to go to the clinic and get some help from a professional is they want to get out of pain. And that is a beautiful objective. And I became, over 18 years of practice, I became expert at helping people get out of pain. And in fact, I've been a student of pain. Pain is one of the most intriguing things I've ever learned to listen to, but pain will always lead to healing. Whether it's a rock in the shoe, whether it's emotional pain, whether it's familial pain, whether it's financial pain, it all leads to something that's causing disruption in the nervous system. And that's been a beautiful skill set that I've acquired and a gift. So the clinical model says the goal is to get out of pain. And here's what I've seen. We get somebody out of pain, and 6 months later, 8 months later, 12 months later, they come back into my clinic with the same amount of pain or worse. And what I've found is getting somebody out of pain is so important. And then from that point, once they're pain-free, because pain is exhausting, it's taxing, it costs energy, it costs us in our relationships and our vocation. Pain has a tax. And so when that person's out of pain, they have actually access to new energy, to newfound energy. And if we've not helped that person change their patterns, rewire old patterns that were disruptive, they go back to pain patterns, because that pain is there to wake them up. Pain comes in my life to wake me up. And so if we don't change those patterns, they go back to the pain pattern. That is a constraint of the clinical model. And so what I feel compelled and inspired to do, and Alan, I feel a thought, so I'll pause in a second, but what I feel compelled to do is I want to help people not only get out of pain, but once they're out of pain is to point that energy in a different pattern. And when we connect them to there's a whole program I've worked with that we help extract core values. When someone knows their values and they know the sequence of their values, they have access to energy. We can do things tirelessly, but it fires a different part of the brain. So no longer do they have to, all the sensory input doesn't have to go through the hindbrain where fight or flight is present, where evolution is present, where not safe and all the things are present. That we can bypass that, and new base camp is at the telencephalon, this value center, then help them connect that newfound energy, not only through their values, but to their mission and vision. And the impact of that, now there's a momentum in this newfound energy directed in a way that's ascension in nature. It impacts positively, of course, their health, but mental and emotional health, familial health, so relationships are better, more enriching, social health, they contribute more to their community, their vocation is locked in with purpose, financial will benefit, and then the spiritual health. And that's not just connection to God, it is part of that, but also their personal identities. There are spiritual identities that we own, and then there are less than spiritual identities that we kind of move into and accept. And so this is the transformation I want to make. So I call it the non-clinical clinical model for people. And the market doesn't yet even know, and I don't pretend that this is a brand new unique product by itself, but also the marketplace doesn't know they even want this or need this thing. And yet I see this as being, when I can pick, and I had the privilege of working on some real, elite clientele that appreciate what I do, but this is what I'm searching to do with more people, is help them accelerate through their life, not just get out of pain. So I'll pause there. I'm glad to hear that, and I agree. I think I tell people all the time, and I mean this sincerely, next to being, these are my privileges, next to being a husband and a father, working people, helping them get through pain and improve their lives, relieve suffering, is my greatest privilege. And it truly is. And it's a unique gift. I've treated over 85,000 patients, and to be in the trenches, front row seat with them, and help them move through pain and ultimately find purpose and meaning to their pain. And we can find meaning to our pain. Now it connects the dots into how did it serve me, and it changes the entire nervous system. With some, I have invoked the name of Jesus Christ on occasion, but I don't do that very often. Just I think there's I've talked about an ethical line there that I feel compelled to hold. But the foundational precept of chiropractic says the power that made the body heals the body. Like if you said that phrase to any chiropractor, they'd recognize it. Whether any chiropractor has embodied that is another topic, but the power that made the body heals the body. And so I share this with my patients all the time. And so that automatically brings into this notion, and how I perceive that is the power that made the body heals the body. There's divinity within our healing. And so that comes into it. So when I talk about mind, body, and spirit, well, I'll take it backwards for a second. In my humble opinion, I believe Western medicine has separated itself unnecessarily and distanced itself from spiritual in healing.
I agree.
Things come back together again in tribes and in different ancient villages, things like that. The tribal healer was like a spiritual leader. I'm not claiming to step into a space of spiritual leadership at all, but I think spirit and healing is such an important piece. And so I do want to restore that notion too. So when you ask that question, yes, I bring spirituality to healing all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's such an important thing to just, I feel like taking taboo away from some of these notions, because we hold on to these beliefs or notions without really any understanding. And the second you shine light on it, it dissolves. And this is part of the work that we do with the nervous system, is just help them to let go of false beliefs and no longer serve them. But I had a patient yesterday, and I'll share this just real brief, because there's story after story after story. But she came in. This is the second time I've seen her. I saw her for the first time about 3 weeks ago or so. She's a bodybuilder, or a aggressive weightlifter, and so she had some significant left hip issues and then upper back and neck issues. And so treated her, got that the hip feels so much better. And then she came back and was like, you know what, upper back and neck are still struggling a bit. And so when I have done some in-depth structural work and it's not really responding much, then I already know that we're now at an energetic level a bit. And I call myself a glorified electrician, so I use the terms of electricity and energy interchangeably as well. But as I get working through her neck, I find I would talk about stress and just asking her to rate her stress, and she's like a 4 out of 10. But then she said, you know, about 2 or 3 years ago, I was like a 9 or 10 out of 10. So we went there for a bit. We spoke about how, you know, the charge of the voltage stores in the fascial system. So ultimately, long story short, we found there was an emotion of frustration. It connected to a false belief of fear of failure. That was running in the background of her nervous system. And the unconscious mind doesn't judge belief systems, it just validates. And so this fear of failure is broadcasting, and her nervous system's in a state of fight or flight. And that's where it's not, you know, the physiology of fight or flight is 100% predictable. Muscles tighten up, blood vessels constrict, digestion slows down, brain function changes, immune system stops working. So this was the piece we lifted yesterday. And we did some release work around failure, and then installed a truer, newer belief. I learned from my mistakes. I do the best I can, and that's enough. And brought failure back into the right lane, because failure is how you learn and grow. I fail until I succeed was another one. And what was beautiful, by the end of this appointment now, she has full range of motion and that pain was gone. And I see this all the time, but I just want to like share that with you, and not that you guys aren't aware of some of these things happening, but this is the depth of work that I feel particularly privileged to do with patients. I think there's right, and I think there's scale inside of this. You know, the first thing is, and this is where Michael and I are totally aligned, is finding our specific targeted niched audience. And it's professionals. So these are certainly executive, you know, C-suite or executive level people, high functioning people, but business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals, whether attorneys, accountants. These are the people that I want to serve. These are people that are busy, don't have a ton of time to take off to go meet with a doctor or whatever, that I can come to them, you know, virtually. And a lot of, like, we'll use dentists and chiropractors as a decent example. They know enough that when they get their blood work done by a general practitioner, I'm not throwing general practitioners under the bus exactly, but in general, it's no news is good news. You took blood, and, you know, we'll call you if there's a problem. And so, and you know, the jig is up. You know, chiropractors and dentists, like, that's a waste of time. And I've never seen perfect blood work. And so there's always things to comment on. There's always ways to serve that person. And we don't have to wait until it's an actual diabetes or other pathology before we start treating it. And so that's a distinguishing point that I think the professionals will value more and are able to pay, you know, to meet that value at a fair exchange.